Welcome to Black History Matters 2024. This is the fourth installment of an educational series produced by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. This year, these short educational videos are meant to provide an introduction to topics important to our understanding of Black American history, but also the larger history of the African diaspora across the world. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's episode, Africa Down Under, Black Communities in Australia. Australia's history is marked by waves of migration and the contact of those migrants with Australia's Aboriginal people. The continent's founding as a British colony in 1788 laid the groundwork for subsequent migration patterns, although African presence in Australia did not gain prominence until the 20th century. Australia's colonial history began with the arrival of British settlers led by Captain Arthur Phillip in 1788, marking the establishment of a penal colony at Sydney Cove. Over the following decades, the British Empire expanded its territorial claims across the continent, leading to the displacement and marginalization of Indigenous Australian communities. Today, the presence of people of African descent is small but growing. About 1.7% of the total population of Australia considers itself of African descent. Therefore, the African diaspora's presence in Australia became only pronounced around the 20th century, particularly following World War II and the subsequent dismantling of the White Australia policy, which restricted non-European immigration. African migration to Australia increased significantly from the 1950s onward, driven by factors such as decolonization, economic opportunities, and political upheaval in various African nations. In the post-World War II era, individuals and families from countries such as Sudan, South Africa, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Ghana sought refuge, employment, and educational opportunities in Australia. Again, keep in mind that post-World War II was the era of decolonization in Africa, after which many new African nations were born, some with significant difficulty. The 1970s witnessed another significant influx of African migrants, including skilled professionals, students, and refugees fleeing political persecution and conflict. Australia has therefore been a site of arrival for those seeking new opportunities. However, I do also want to highlight one example of the often coercive migratory patterns that Australia experienced. The 1823 Demerara slave rebellion in British Guinea, present-day Guyana, is a pivotal moment in the history of Caribbean resistance against slavery. Sparked by the oppressive conditions endured by enslaved Africans on sugar plantations, the rebellion erupted on the sugar estates along the east coast of Demerara. Led by figures like Jack Gladstone, Kamina, and John Smith, the rebellion aimed to secure freedom and justice for the enslaved population. The Demerara uprising was met with harsh repression by colonial authorities, who deployed military forces to suppress the revolt. After several weeks of intense conflict, the rebellion was quelled, and many enslaved individuals were captured, imprisoned, or executed. The aftermath of the rebellion saw a wave of reprisals and punitive measures enacted against the enslaved population, further entrenching the institution of slavery in the colony. In the wake of the rebellion, hundreds of enslaved Africans who had participated in the uprising faced exile and deportation as punishment for their resistance. Many of these individuals were forcibly transported to various British colonies, including Queensland, Australia, where they were subject to further exploitation and hardship in the nascent sugar industry. The deportation of African rebels from Demerara to Queensland reflects the broader patterns of colonial repression and exploitation that characterized the Atlantic slave trade and its aftermath. The influx of enslaved Africans to Queensland contributed to the labor force of the sugar plantations, enabling the expansion of the sugar industry in the Australian colonies. It also underscores the interconnectedness of global histories of slavery and colonialism, highlighting the enduring struggles for freedom and human dignity across different regions and across vast oceans. To conclude, Australia's abnormal foundation as a penal colony would shape the nature of the migrants it will receive over the next few centuries. Therefore, this is a story of the many peoples of Africa that have seen Australia as a new beginning, either through their own will or coercively brought. Thank you for joining us today for this short presentation on Africa Down Under, Black Communities in Australia. On your screen, you will see a link to a Google form. The link is also available in the video description, and this link will take you to a survey where you can leave feedback about your experience with this video. Your feedback helps us plan for future events and to secure funding, so we really appreciate if you can take a few minutes to fill it out. Once again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next presentation.